What are your sort of suggestions for people who are potentially looking at starting or have started, but they just feel they can't concentrate?
I guess the number one thing to consider is why. Why is it that you're looking to meditate? For instance, if you can't sleep, that is a pretty good why. Once you've established your why, that's your intention. And then start small, but start. You can start with a one breath meditation. The in-breath does is you feel like you arrive in the body. Then the hold is to really feel like you're there. And then the out-breath is the releasing and letting go. Stress is essentially a reaction to a circumstance you don't like, or the pressure or something not going your way. And so you're reacting to that. And as you keep reacting to the stress, you're simply changing the makeup of your brain, the architecture of your mind. And the part of the brain which is responsible for stress reacting is going to grow, and you'll get better at it. So it's an opportunity to intercept and course correct.
Introducing Tomas Jajesnica, aka Mr. Meditate, a sought-after expert on mental skills for the workplace. Over 10 years, he's helped over 80,000 employees with a positive and evidence-based approach to preventing, maintaining, and improving employee mental health and work performance.
Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Dr. Gan, and today I have an amazing guest by the name of Tomas Jajesnica, who is Mr. Meditate himself. He's been in the meditation field for many years. Over 10 years, he's been helping around 80,000 employees, especially when it comes to preventing, maintaining, and also focusing on their mental health and also work performance. How are you, Thomas?
I'm terrific. Thanks, Gan.
Well, great to have you here. I've got a whole bunch of questions, but I'm going to start off with you're a business owner. You have had struggles and stresses in the past. How did you sort of get into meditation, and how did you get into creating Mr. Meditate as well?
I'll be succinct. So the meditation wanted to be happy, and I realized money doesn't form a lasting source of happiness. And then I was kind of guided as such, or directed in the world of meditation. I thought I'd give it a go, and I did. And then eventually kind of pursued that because I felt the significant changes in my life, pretty much straight away. And then working in the legal profession, not as a lawyer, as that'll be clearly evident as we go through this podcast. Very, very happy. But once the legal profession became the most depressed, I had an epiphany to do something about it. And that's when Mr. Meditate was born in 2012, the idea at least.
Oh, wow. How long before that have you been meditating?
I had that first session in the year 2000. And then after a couple of years of testing all sorts of different traditions and teachers, I didn't like the rites and rituals associated. So I found a 10-day silent retreat called Vipassana, which I promised myself to do every year since. And I've done 11 of them. But since I teach for commercial gain, I'm not allowed to sit those courses anymore. But I've found other ways. So pretty much meditated most days since I started.
And when you first started, was it straight into Vipassana, or did you do other meditations?
No. So there was all sorts. There was, various breathing techniques. There was, the body stuff from all sorts of different traditions and teachers. So yeah, I really explored and was curious about it. But again, the rites and the rituals didn't suit me. So I kept looking.
Yeah. And I think the hardest challenge people have really is starting, especially if they find it hard to sit on their own and just focus on things that are, it's hard for anyone to sit alone with their eyes closed or even with their eyes open. What are your sort of suggestions for people who are potentially looking at starting or have started, but they just feel they can't concentrate?
Well, that's definitely going to happen. The reason, I guess the number one thing to consider is why. Right. So why is it that you're looking to meditate, or why is it looking to improve or to change some circumstance in your life? And once that is established, for instance, if you can't sleep, that is a pretty good why. If you're overthinking, laying there at night and so forth, and, that's zapping your energy and, changing your, influencing your mood and emotions. So that's a really good why. Once you've established your why, that's your intention. And then start small, but start. And you can start with a one breath meditation, right? You can do a 1 minute, right? But I would recommend doing some sort of course or introduction with a teacher to guide you, especially in the early days. The apps are wonderful training wheels, right, to guide you and so forth, but an in-person session with a teacher where you can ask questions and talk about the challenges which you will face in practice, in life, and how to deal with those problems and issues to really set your foundation and establish yourself in practice.
So you think the apps are sort of a good way to start, but then obviously finding doing a course would probably be a bit more beneficial, I guess.
I think so. And from my experience, yes. And ultimately, you want to be able to learn how to do this practice by yourself when you want to, when you need to, without any tools, without any equipment. So you can do this anytime, anywhere. And once you learn how to or develop those skills, then that's the ultimate where you want to get to. You want to be able to lose those training wheels so you can meditate whenever you want and have the skill set to be able to deal with those challenges that you will face, like not be able to concentrate for sure.
100%. So in terms of we mentioned Vipassana meditation. For those who don't know, this is sort of it's a guided form of meditation that takes you through 10 days of training, and you're not talking to anyone. I mean, I've obviously simplified it, but there's a person that guides you through it, and he's no longer around, but he has recordings. What are the other forms of meditation? If, for example, there's a lot of for some of the listeners out there who are completely busy professionals, business owners, executives, they don't have the time to go for a course, and they really want to get into it because right now their life is in slight chaos in their mind, at least, and a lot of stress. So what are the various levels they could go through if they wanted to do this on their own?
Well, there's so many teachers, so many apps out there, right? So find one that resonates. And rather than doing a 10-day, that's a deep dive, right? And that's not for everybody. And it requires, full planning and time off and so forth, which a lot of these business owners don't currently have. And so even starting with, a 10-minute practice through like an introduction to meditation course or a program as such, to help you take the smallest possible steps, but in the direction that you wish to go, you wish to head. So the reason why you're doing it, if it's helping you to improve, then that is a good measure of that it's working. So start small, but start. And you can start with various, so many online resources, etc. But even, 5-minute meditations, right? To essentially train or develop mental skills in attention and attitude. And you've already talked about concentration, and that is where we start. To be able to train the mind to focus on where you want it to focus versus being distracted, lost in thought, thinking about all the unpaid bills or the emails that you haven't responded to. So to be able to center your mind is a very, really important discipline.
It's like the monkey mind they talk about, isn't it?
Indeed. Right. So this is where we start. And as you develop in this practice, you'll realize that all these distractions, these thoughts, these imaginations, is just the training, right? In this practice, the training to notice those when they happen. So when the mind wanders off, I've noticed. That's the mindfulness bit. That's becoming aware, and that's a tick. So when you notice that the mind has wandered, now the next part of that is how do you remain balanced when it keeps wandering, right? So that's what we call equanimity. To have this mental equilibrium amidst the ups and downs of life, which we all have, and business owners, entrepreneurs probably have higher ups and downs, right? Because they're striving, they're wanting to, inspire or put something new in the market or help the world, whatever that is. So there's a little bit of a download for you.
Yeah, interesting. You've been doing this for over 10 years, and it sounds like you started 2000 from your meditation. Can you share some of your initial struggles or how you came to, to find peace and equanimity?
Equanimity, yes. So there's a really profound moment in my first 10-day silent retreat. You're left with your own thoughts. You're sitting like a statue. If you took a photo, everyone would think that you're such a good meditator, right? But inside, there was commotion. There's a whirlwind. And essentially, the circumstance at the time, the girl I was living with was all supportive, and then said that if you go to this 10-day retreat, I'm going to sleep with somebody else. And I said, of course, I'm going on this retreat. If you do, we're over. If you don't, I guess we're still together, but I'm going on this retreat. And for the first few days, all this new breathing stuff, this techniques. Oh, right, great. I'm curious. And then when not much new information is coming in, all that stuff started bubbling up. And I wasn't able to focus. I was so agitated, frustrated, and couldn't sit still. And here I am having to meditate 10 hours a day, dealing with this own crazy mind. And couldn't sleep, ready to run away and just cause commotion. But of course, this is all in my head. Well, here I am sitting at this retreat. So my biggest shift that happened on that retreat, and that's helped me ever since, is to shift out of reacting to this of what somebody said, right? So she said that she's going to do that, and here I am reacting and causing this storm in my head, and a shift to responding how I choose to respond. And that is a choice we all have at any moment in time. And stress is essentially a reaction, right, to a circumstance you don't like, or the pressure or something not going your way. And so you're reacting to that. And as you keep reacting to the stress, you're simply changing the makeup of your brain, the architecture of your mind. And the part of the brain which is responsible for stress reacting is going to grow, and you'll get better at it. So it's an opportunity to intercept and course correct. So the biggest shift was out of blind reaction to circumstance to a mindful response. And of course, like everybody, it's a work in progress.
Yeah. So you obviously have tough days and struggles, and your mind, someone cuts you off the road, or you miss the train.
Well, this is where the attitude kicks in, right? A tough day is a bit of a loss of perspective, especially for us here in Australia. We have such an easy, blessed life just by being here. And somebody cutting you off in traffic one day, your arms go everywhere. I can't believe it. And you maybe a swear word or few. And then the next day, same circumstance, and you go, well, what's the difference? It's the attitude. It's your approach to the circumstances, whatever they are, whether they're wanted or unwanted. And most people, give me more of the good stuff. Oh, give me more. Less of the bad stuff. Oh, no, I don't want that. Less of the bad stuff. We crave and we have aversions, right? The more we crave and cling for these things and avoid things, the more miserable we will be. It's a very universal law. So it needs to start with an acceptance, right? So regardless of your circumstance, if you start with acceptance, then there's a sense of stability for you to be able to change or improve or address whatever circumstance you face. And that is a huge factor. And the things that are neutral and between the good and bad that we crave and avoid are often ignored, right? And one of these things that we ignore often is the breath. And when you start to pay attention to those neutral things, you start to put extra into the ordinary. You have a perspective on, hey, I've got a fully able body. I can do whatever I want with today. Wow, look at all the choices I have to make. And here I am reacting to, I'm stressing out about something that hasn't even happened yet. And half the time, or more, the stuff that you're stressing and worrying about don't even happen.
Yeah.
So there's this angst, there's this draining kind of energy that you put into your day, which the energy component, particularly as an entrepreneur, you need to be match fit. And of course, you're going to have ups and downs, but if you ride them with equanimity, with a mental balance, it'll determine your experience.
I think the other issue people have is that no matter whether it's good or bad, there's always a story they put to it. So, for example, you're stuck at a traffic light and you're like, I'm going to be late. Then you probably have a car accident. There's a car accident somewhere along, and then you think, oh, I'm definitely going to be late. And then they create more of that. So all of a sudden you're attracting, I know a lot of people don't like to look at that, but then you're attracting that energy as well, where you go, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. How much of that do you think is a big part, especially when you're trying to have a neutral feel during your day?
It's a huge component. And I think as a society, as a people, we are addicted to conceptualization. We're addicted to thinking and overthinking. And this is this kind of practices is an opportunity to center your mind. Otherwise, it's like a snow globe, shaken up. All those snowflakes are like thoughts, this thought, that thought, this thought, that thought. And before you know it, there's agitation, there's frustration, and so forth. So there needs to be an opportunity to develop some serenity. We all need serenity, and we all seek it. Oh, I wish I was calm. I'm so stressed. I wish I was calm. I'm all distracted. I'd love to be able to focus and be centered. And so serenity can only really be achieved with silence and stillness. And so many people tell me that, oh, yes, running is their meditation, or swimming or cycling or whatever it is. And yes, it is a form of moving meditation, right? You're kind of in the body, you're cycling, you're doing repetitive moves, and it does clear the brain and the mind, helps it to settle, develop clarity. Yes, but nonetheless, your body is so stimulated when you're exercising. Of course, your heart rate's going up or whatever it is. So silence and stillness are necessary for serenity. And for a lot of people, they realize how non-serene or unserene, whatever the word is, they are when they lay down to sleep at night. The momentum of thinking they've had throughout the course of the day just keeps going and going and going and going. Or they get to sleep and then 3 a.m., boom, waking up wired, thinking about the project or whatever it is that they got going. So there needs to be ways and little tools to intercept that. And when you do, or if you do wake up at 3 a.m., to know what to do, to have some sort of skill or technique to be able to trigger the relaxation response to get yourself to sleep again.
What would you recommend? Because that's a common question I often get, and I've been through it as well. Where you wake up at 4 o'clock, you're thinking about all these other things that you should be doing, and maybe you should follow this up. Should you put it in your to-do list right now, or should you wait till the morning in case you forget? So, what would you recommend? You wake up at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning.
Well, do whatever works in a sustainable fashion, right? And a big part of this is to design it to suit you. So I'm going to give you a little prescribed method, which has helped thousands. And when I hear the responses from people, I go, wow, I came along a year ago and I've been doing it ever since. It's changed me. So we're looking for little 1% improvements, right? This is not a quick fix. This is not just like a one-off or a little event. This is a process, and it's a lifelong process, just like physical fitness. And what I'd recommend is something that we all do naturally anyway. I suspect that we all do this. And after a long day or a busy day at work, let's say you come home and jump on the couch and you go, do you do that, Gan?
Not exactly in that fashion, but I do have a sigh, I think.
Okay. So that sigh that we is what triggers the parasympathetic nervous system. So in simple terms, the relaxation response or the rest and digest response. And the simplicity of it is crazy. Essentially, what you need to do is to have an elongated out-breath. So the out-breath needs to be longer than the in-breath. So one of the methods that I teach is the 3-2-5. In for 3, hold for 2, and then all the way out to 5. And as you breathe out, letting go of any tension, worries, concerns, or any stresses, you allow the muscles in the body to relax, the shoulders to soften. And it's like you've decompressed just after 3 of those breaths. Now, you can continue doing that as long as you like. But essentially what the in-breath does is you feel like you arrive in the body. Then the hold is to really feel like you're there. And then the out-breath is the releasing and letting go. Letting go of those thoughts, letting go of all the conceptualization. To be where the body is, not past rumination or future projection, but to really fall awake to when the life is happening from this moment to the next. And when you approach sleep in a much more stable mind, even though you can't sleep at that point in time, your ability to be able to fall asleep again improves dramatically. But now, consider this a skill. And as with any skill, or most skills, that you're not going to be good at it at the beginning. In fact, you're probably going to be rubbish and terrible. But it's not that important whether you're good or bad at meditation. It's why you're doing it that counts. And if you're bad at it, you're joining a very, very big club globally of people who are not good at meditation. Again, It's why you're doing it. And then as you keep doing it, as you keep practicing these little mini and micro or a 10-minute session, you start to become more familiar. And then your skills over time improves. And then you might not really notice the changes as you go, these little 1%ers. But when you keep going and then you look back after a few months, it becomes completely obvious. It's like, wow, I sleep better. I'm not reacting as much, or whatever it is for you.
I think it's quite interesting. I heard this Dr. Andrew Weil, he was talking about, and I've heard it before anyways, but they talk about the 4-7-8 for getting into breathing. So 4 breaths in, hold it for 7, and then exhale for 8 seconds, and then hold for another 4. I think it's similar to your 2-3-5. Is that right? 2-3-5.
3-2-5, yes.
3-2-5. And I think there's a lot of benefit in breathing exercises to try to help. But the issue is, if you're not getting immediate relief, sometimes you're like, is this even working? Why am I even doing this? And that thought process starts to come.
Well, exactly. And why am I even doing this? And that question needs to be established or answered before you start. I'm doing this, right? Because just like with exercise, like, it's not all roses, it's not all sexy. Hardest part is getting to the gym. Once you're there, you start, you walk out better, but you might walk out sore, right? Or you've pushed yourself, or there was frustration as you go, right? But you keep going, and next thing you know, the muscles build. But unlike the gym, where there's a lot of resistance, right, to build those muscles, with this practice, it's all about letting go.
Yeah.
Right. Being able to let go of the thoughts, right? when you're wanting to sleep, letting go of the angst, or right. So it's about being able to release so that you can be in the present moment, which is the only time. It's from now to now to now to now. That's all history, and that's all mystery.
Yes.
Right. So when Christmas comes, you're not going to get to Christmas and say, oh, where did that year go? I was so busy and so forth. You get to Christmas, you'll know where that year went. Your days were full, right? Because you were awake to that. You weren't just lost in thought. More than 50% of the time, people generally are somewhere else, lost in thought.
And in terms of you've obviously worked with a lot of organizations and also with a lot of either business owners, entrepreneurs, executives. What do you think the commonest challenge they have, which is hindering them from from getting that performance that they're looking for?
The performance they're looking for. So I think with any skill requires discipline, right? So business owners, this is my second business, and they're crazy, right? And ambitious and inspired and wanting to bring something good to the world, or be able to create their own livelihood. And I've seen so many. I've worked in co-working, co-working spaces. I've seen hundreds of inspired business owners, right? But so they've got their idea, they get started, and then the realities start to kick in that it doesn't necessarily follow the straight to the moon trajectory as they imagine that their grand vision would have. And then there's all these other requests for their time, or screams for their attention. Oh, you've got to do the banking, or you've got to do the marketing, or you've got to have this meeting for sales, or you've got to do admin, right? And then you start wearing multiple hats. Oh, then there's a website to design or to do, and there's all these things going on all the whilst that inspired action, or that inspired reason for starting is there. And what I found is that people get too, shifted out of their core focus, and it becomes overwhelming, right? It's like, Mary baking pies, and she's then got to do the cleaning, the books, and so forth. And then she leaves the pie shop at 10 p.m., but she's got to be there again at 3 a.m. And then it's an unsustainable long-term plan. So you've got to be able to keep yourself fit, mentally stable, focused, and relaxed, regardless of what you're doing, right? So it's basically taking a 5 or 10 minute time out to center yourself, to go, hey, what are my goals here? What are my priorities here? This is what I'm going to get done. That is a low priority, non-urgent, and start categorizing your day. But over time, you'll work out a flow. You'll have plenty of ups and downs, and I've had plenty of them. And if I wasn't in the meditation game, I would probably be a stress head. But so if that's you, then just know that there are tools out there for you to reduce stress, right? Increase your stability, increase your attention, work on your attitude as you go through all these ups and downs.
Yeah, I think that's as you were sort of describing that story, I think a lot of people probably resonate because it's a common thing. And I find that it often becomes a ramp-on effect because, as you said, you're wearing multiple hats, you're having to do multiple things, and you're prioritizing in order to make sure that you do the most important thing that makes the biggest difference. And then potentially, hopefully, you're delegating as well. But I think one of the biggest challenge is how do you stop the ramp on? Because as you know, with a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, they they take on everything because they feel they can and they have to because they have this big goal they want to reach. So how do they sort of take that time to actually slow down and say, actually, I'm going to take some time to center and then focus again when they're starting to ramp on and there's multiple things thrown at them.
And this is where the self-discipline is required. And the number one trait of success for CEOs is that they meditate every day, right? They have more pressure than most people out there, and lots of people wanting their time, etc. And it's a way to be able to essentially maintain your focus, your goal orientation, and the stuff that's coming in from the sides needs to be kind of dissipated, right? Because if you don't kind of keep your attention there to achieve those goals, then you're not going to get it. And so imagine the CEO walking through his office where there's 400 people on the floor. People are going, oh, hi, 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 hi. He's got to keep his attention on where he needs to go, otherwise he'll be late, right? But that being said, there needs to be a balance here, because if you're too goal orientated, it's like you've got blinkers. Yes, you'll reach that goal, but you miss out on the life as it's happening around you as well, right? So there needs to be a nice balance. And ultimately, what this process helps you to do is to remain balanced, right? Because the ups and downs you've had all your life, you're going to have for the remainder of your life. If you find me somebody without ups and downs, I'll be surprised. I've got a few questions for them. Right? So how you navigate in that landscape is up to you. So my tip is to keep yourself fit, mentally fit. And this process, 80% of the work is done in the head, like is in the mental side, but 20% permeates to the body. And I would say the opposite is true for physical fitness. 80% for the body, but it permeates 20% to the mind. So what can you do each day to help you to better deal with all the ups and downs, which are going to keep coming, right? So how to come from a composed place versus a scattered place.
How frequently should someone be looking at, with the meditation and maybe doing little practices during the day? How frequently should they be doing it?
I wouldn't say should. I'm not a fan of the word should. It creates unnecessary pressure. If they're looking to do it, I would recommend starting small, but starting. So 10 minutes, 3 times a week is the minimum effective dose. So if you go to a 1 hour class once a week, yes, that's very relaxing and so forth, but there's a whole week that goes by, right? And 10 minutes, 3 times a week would be more effective over time if you do that. Now, so starting small, and if that starts to serve you, then maybe do 4 days or 5 days and just slowly, gradually work up. If that's serving you, then maybe increase the duration. But 10 minutes, 3 times a week is the minimum effective dose if you want to maintain the mental, emotional, and physical benefits of this practice.
And even a minute session during the day when you're, in the car waiting for something or you're waiting at the traffic lights, potentially.
Beautiful moments. Absolutely. A 1 minute, we've got a technique called the 1 minute relaxation response, which I kind of touched on, but it continues a little bit. So to take a minute to let go of any tension, the stress and so forth, and to let go of that edginess without losing your edge. And a perfect opportunity to do this, I don't drink coffee, but I have a lot of coffee meetings, and is when you order your coffee at the coffee shop, well, you've got 3 or 5 minutes. What do most people do? Sink more information in, give it more overload. That's a beautiful opportunity to center yourself, to develop some stability, to relax whilst being alert.
I think being by yourself in your own mind is sometimes a very challenging proposition for people, which is why they often turn to the phones, because there's distraction, it's entertainment. They don't have to actually put themselves out there, and it's consumption rather than sitting there and just being by yourself. Because even when I was younger and I'm waiting for something, I don't feel that anymore, but it's that uncomfortable feeling of like, what should I be doing? Should I be sitting here? Should I be standing? And so I think a lot of people go through this, and that's why I feel they kind of lean towards the phones. But uh, I do it all as well. You're waiting for the train, you're waiting to go somewhere, you're in the car, you just automatically want to go on the phone, and just maybe tick off a few boxes of things you had to do as well.
Yes. When you are sitting by yourself, you will be confronted with things you wish to avoid. It's a very beautiful, revealing and unraveling process. But at the same time, there'll be moments of elation, deep peace, real kind of calm and harmony, right? And everything in between. And for a lot of people, there's this need to be constantly connected with the world, right? And technology companies want your attention, and they know how to get it, and they're getting it for longer. And it's like, oh, I need to know, oh, Donald Trump farted today. Oh, right. And there's all these posts and so forth, or Ray Gun and so forth. Like, really, this is what you're doing, and so you're filling your mind, you're overloading, you're overstimulating. And when it's overstimulated, you're not going to learn as well. You're not going to remember as well, because your mind is all over the place. So imagine, again, that mind is a snow globe. You need to allow it to settle. And the other thing is, most people come to these practices when things aren't going well.
True.
I'm stressed. I can't sleep. Right. Oh, I'm overloaded. Oh, just got angsty. I've got a short fuse. Right. It's just not going well. But there's, and it's it's world's number one stress buster. If you know something better to bust stress than meditation, please let me know, and I'll start practicing it. But then, that's really related to our negative bias, right? Our brain is there designed to protect us from threat. You give somebody 9 compliments and 1 piece of constructive criticism, you know what they're going to remember, right? So, it's always kind of there scanning for threats. But then there's the 20% of clients or individuals who come to this practice where everything's going pretty good, right? They've got this, achieving their goals, they've got a nice rhythm and so forth, but they're looking to then take it to the next level. Well, what else can I do to give myself an edge, or to function better, perform better, whatever it is? And so just need to be cognizant of the fact that we do have a negative bias in our brain, and those things are going to get our attention because they're perceived threats. Yeah. And a lot of the threats these days are psychological, and that's a perception of. So when people come to, they just need that stimulation, or there's the opportunity to pause, right? To fall awake to what's happening right now, how you're feeling, and to get out of the head, to give that brain a break. And brain breaks are super necessary. And so here's another little tip, that a brain break is necessary because otherwise it's just stuck in this prefrontal cortex area, this executive function, all the rationalization, decision-making. And when you overload that, stress kicks in, right? Oh, I'm stressed. The amygdala detects the threat, throws cortisol there, and it overlooks the hippocampus, which is designed for you to learn and remember. So when you give your brain a break, and that could be as simple as just staring at the sky without any stimulation, so no phone, no conversation, just allowing the brain to go into neutral, go into idle, let it rest, let it be bored, right? Even for 5 minutes, just to stare in that sky. And the brain starts to settle, and then the other parts of the brain start to connect and process information better. And you're heading in the direction of serenity and stillness. Now, when there's space in the mind, when that snow globe settles, right, that's when the aha moments come in, those light bulb moments, those new ideas. Because when the brain is full of stimulation, there's no room for those new ideas. And most people have these ideas in the shower or on the toilet, because they've come to their senses, right? The hot or cold water, or whatever your preference is for the shower, is getting them out of their heads, right? So that's a big part of why brain breaks are so necessary, and it's a chance to get out of thinking and into sensing, right?
What do you think of there's this what's been popularized recently with Andrew Huberman called non-sleep deep rest or yoga nidra. Do you know much about that, and what are your thoughts about that?
I don't know about that particular phrasing of that.
Yes.
Yoga nidra, I'm very familiar with, and again, whatever works. If you like yoga nidra, do yoga nidra. If you like something else, do something else. And I'm not saying that everybody should meditate. If you can find that serenity, that calm, the focus, the clarity elsewhere, terrific. Do it and continue to do it, right? But this is a way to enhance of a tried and tested method. It's only been around for 2,500 years. People keep doing it because they recognize it. So the yoga nidra is a way to come to your senses in the body. You know, you go to this part of the body when you're laying there at night and so forth. A terrific technique, if that works for you. If it works, do it. If it doesn't, there are plenty of others.
Sure. It's interesting. I did the Vipassana meditation. I've only done it once, the 10-day course. And
only that's still that's an investment. That's a lot of discipline.
I know,
I'm
but
sure.
you know, it's you've done it 11 times. I know a couple of my friends who've done it 3 or 4 times and even done 20. Is it 20 or 30 days? I think they.
Yep.
And it's a big commitment because essentially you're not speaking to anyone for that time. There's no communication. But the one thing that I like to say here is that when I first went there, my intention was obviously, you know, I want to get into meditation, and like a good student, I was really interested going through the practice. So after the first day, they put us in rooms, and I was sharing a room with someone else. They said, go back to your room and you can meditate. So I ran back to the room, started meditating. And the guy who was sleeping across from me, he started meditating, but within the first 2 minutes, he started snoring. So here I'm trying to get my focus and trying to meditate, and he started snoring, and I was like, what's going on? I was getting so frustrated, which was obviously a test for myself. But then at the same time, I was like, you know, I'm trying to focus here, but the noise was so loud and it was stimulating me. Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, so here you are reacting to that noise, right?
Yeah.
It's just a sound, but you're interpreting, I'm supposed to be meditating, there's snoring here. I used to have the same with ticking clocks. I'd go set myself up and start meditating, and tick, tick, would drive me wild for about 2 years.
Yeah.
And I realized after a couple of years that I'm reacting to that, right? And so a lot of people look for the perfect environment in which to meditate. And I've asked, what's the ideal environment? People tell me, under Machu Picchu, Inca Trail, under this tree, that would be my ideal spot. Someone under this coconut tree with 2 coconuts on it in somewhere in the South Pacific. And it's like, okay, well, what about now? It's not practical for you to go there and to get there to that perfect ideal spot.
I hope we broke that clock, Thomas.
I did remove many batteries. I've taken many clocks off the walls, even in other people's houses. Right. So I lost my train here.
You're talking about Machu Picchu and finding that perfect place.
This ideal place, right?
Yeah.
An ideal place is anytime, anywhere. And this frustration is a sign of a breakthrough, right? If you keep getting frustrated about something, you're going to work it out, right? So the frustration is just going to drain your energy and so forth. But nonetheless, that's the reality at the time. And when you're practicing these, like let's say seated formal practices with your eyes closed, right? These distractions like, that somebody's snoring or ticking clocks and so forth, are just training for you to relax, to let go of that distraction and bring your attention to something more important. That's your breath or your body, right? And rather than trying to clamp down, shut up, everyone, the whole world, shut up because I'm meditating, right? You just bring more attention to what you want to bring it. And the breath is always with us. And that's a huge part of my practice. Now, to give you an example, I've meditated at train stations. I've meditated at stadiums with 100,000 people, right? When there's that many people, that just becomes like white noise in the background, right? And then you can tune into your own reality wherever you are. So it's the frustration, the distractions, they're just training for you to relax. And it takes a while, right?
100%.
Right? And I still react to things. Of course, I'm a human, right? But I get back into balance a lot quicker than what I used to, way quicker than what I used to. So something that would annoy me for somebody would say something for an hour or two became 59 minutes, and it became 58. And eventually, it doesn't get me out of my jolt for too long, because I've got ways to bring myself back into where my body is. Here I am, and how lucky I am.
So, Thomas, with your health, have you had any major issues? Obviously, with meditation, it helps you mentally, but from a physical standpoint, have you had any issues? And also, have you seen any benefits with meditation?
Well, I reflected about this a few years ago now, and I realized that since I did my first 10-day silent retreat in 2002, I have been perfectly healthy. I don't get colds, no flus, no whatever's, perfectly healthy. And the only factor I can associate with that, because my physical fitness levels have fluctuated over the years, is the fact that I've had this discipline of meditating. So imagine a more serene mind is going to permeate to a serene body. When your brain and mind is more in balance, then your body is in balance, homeostasis, right?
Mm.
So if you're stressing out and so forth, that's out of whack, and no doubt that's going to permeate to a cold, a flu, or whatever it is. And I see it all around everywhere. But everyone needs to come to this on their own, right?
Mm.
This is not something that you should do this or you should do that. No, actually don't, unless you want to, right? And know your why. So health-wise, may continue 22 years straight of perfect health.
And what's your current practice now for your meditation?
So every day I wake up, I start my day with at least 30 minutes, because what I've found over the years as well is that as I continue my practice, my sleep quality improves, and I don't need as much of it. I wake up more rested, more rejuvenated. So anywhere between my personal practice is 30 to 60 minute sessions once or twice a day. On top of that, obviously, I facilitate. Even though I'm running the session, I still get to meditate with groups. And yeah, that's my
and we have
discipline.
we have a session, or sort of a part of this show, where we talk about walking the talk. And so I guess my question is, when you've had a tough day and there's a lot of events happening, how do you walk the talk when, as we've spoken before, you're human and things happen?
I sit with it, right? So I have plenty of full days in business, and I sit and observe what's going on for me, right? All these unwanted things that have happened, all these wanted things that have happened, and I get perspective. And I start from the place that, hey, I'm lucky. I get to do this. I don't have to do this. This is what I'm choosing to do. And it's really an attitude, right? Tomorrow will be better. And if today was a crappy day, things didn't go your way or whatever else, but not to lose perspective, right? To keep remembering how lucky you are. And if you may want to pin it back to the fact that, hey, how lucky are you that you are a human being? The chances of you being a human being are billions or trillions to one. And the fact that you get to have this experience as a human being, this evolved being, remember that. And making the most of this precious time versus I'll be happy if that happens or when that happens. Because underneath all this stress, all this commotion, whatever else, is an abundance, is a well of inner peace, of joy, of happiness, of love, of freedom, of truth. If only you can slow this nut job down. And of course, I speak on my own behalf.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because when we started this episode, we were talking, you sort of spoke about when you were doing your working in legal, you realized that, money wasn't going to get you there. And that wasn't
I realized
bringing,
that when I was 16.
when you were 16.
I wanted to be like all these rock stars, traveling the world, full loaded, full of money and so forth. That's happiness.
Yes. So how did you come to that realization at 16?
Well, no, I wanted to be happy in this life. That was just something I've consistently felt. And in my late teens, early 20s, I met a bunch of multimillionaires. with their mansions, their Aston Martins, their bling and so forth. And the majority of those people that I met were miserable. It's like, oh, always angsty, calling, stressing, they only want me for my money or whatever it is. It's like, wow, they've got everything that I thought I wanted to be happy. They've got all this money and still they're unhappy. So that was when the shift happened. And yes, of course, money does make you happy. It's what you can get, what you can, purchase, what you can consume,
Experience.
where you live, experience, right? But it doesn't last, right? So if I gave you $1 million today, right, I'm sure you'd walk out of this podcast with a bit bigger smile than you currently have, right? But maybe in a year's time, it's like, oh, well, where's my next million? Oh, I've got another, right? And so yes, it does make you happy, but it doesn't last. Now, when you give of yourself, right, when you help others be happy, like volunteering or so forth, right, that happiness lasts, right? It's called eudaimonia. It's got every vowel in that word, EUDIAMONIA, eudaimonia. And it's where you help somebody else be happy, right? So in my work, even after a crappy day, if there's one person that walked out with benefit from it, I can rest my head at night knowing that I've contributed to this planet in a nice, noble fashion.
Yeah, that's
so
quite
it's
beautiful.
Perspective. It's this attitude determining my experience. I could go, oh no, how's this going to happen? How's it all going to eventuate? But it's the unknown, right? And why should it get me out of balance now, right? And impede the quality of my life now when this stuff hasn't even happened yet. So it's about, again, training the mind to be present-minded and to tap into this well of abundance of information that exists in all of us, right? And yet we're constantly seeking external more and more and more and more. Hang on, how much can you consume without, what are you actually going to use and produce from all that consumption of information? So, yeah, there's a little stance.
Amazing. Well, can you leave the listeners or the viewers with probably 5 tips you think would be beneficial for them moving on so that they could get on with a practice right now, or they could do something that could help them when it comes to meditation?
So this applies to the practice, but also applies to other areas of one's life. And that could be business, right? So the first step is why, right? Know your why, right? So your motivation will wax and wane, right? Yes, there'll be days where you're motivated, yes, full of energy, and there'll be other days where why am I, do I really have to do this? So if you've established your why, whether the motivation is high or low, you remember, this is why I'm doing it. And in this case, it could be to stress less or to sleep better or whatever it is, whatever your thing to improve is, get that firstly established. Secondly, design it to suit you, right? So this process, your business, right? You carve out your path, right? And so it must work for you and serve you as well. Number 3 is the discipline, the self-discipline to continue with these practices. Patiently and persistently, you are bound to be successful. And that success is your intention. So if you're sleeping 1% better, right? If you're stressing 1% less, great. Over time, right, this is your success. So patience and persistence. Then as you go, test and measure, right? How is this actually working in my life? Yes, you could be all great when you're meditating. Oh, yes, so holy and so forth. But then if you go through and you date and somebody cuts you off and you're losing your marbles, or you're stressing, worrying, and so forth, that's not working. Yes, it's great when you're meditating. So relaxing, so serene. But if it's not permeating your day-to-day life, then what's the point? And the number 5 is your attitude, right? It determines your experience. So regardless of what's going on, you control your attitude. So that's up to you.
Well, thanks for those great points, Thomas. I think the intention that you were talking about before you start any practice, I think that helps so much. And I really appreciate the work that you do and the people that you're helping. And thanks for coming on the show.
Fantastic. Thank you, Gan. Really appreciate the invite.
Yep. Speak soon.
Cheers. Thank you.
This wraps up this episode of Peak Performance Hacks. All the links and resources are in the video description or in the resource section, whether it is on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you're watching this on YouTube, please consider subscribing. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave us a review so that more people can discover our podcast and it could benefit them as well. Until I catch you next time, speak soon.